Good evening and welcome. We are thrilled that you are here tonight for such a special program to hear and learn from feminist extraordinaire and giant of our time, Gloria Steinem. I'm Rabbi Pam Silk, and on behalf of Congregation Emanu, our clergy, staff, and members, we are delighted to welcome you to our congregational home and so very proud to host tonight's program. We are grateful to Brazos Bookstore and the Evelyn Rubenstein JCC, our amazing partners, for providing us the rich opportunity to bring our speaker's message to so many of you. Your presence with us tonight, those of us here in the beautiful Barish Sanctuary, gathered in the Kaplan Theater at the ERJCC, and those streaming from home, powerfully indicates that the teachings of Gloria Steinem are as important and necessary and sought after as when she began her inspirational work years ago. The messages Ms. Steinem will share with us tonight are a glowing beacon to which we need to remain ever focused and directed towards. When offered the opportunity to host tonight's program, our team jumped at the chance, not just because we know Gloria Steinem's caliber of writing and speaking, but because her messages so perfectly align with the values and vision of Congregation Emanu. We are a place that strives to exert a visible and consequential force on the spiritual and moral, intellectual and cultural life of Houston. And tonight, as Gloria Steinem speaks from our pulpit, her presence and voice does just that. Our religious tradition implores us to be a light unto the nations and to pursue justice. We proudly host Gloria Steinem tonight because her message has the power to inspire each and every one of us to be that light, that glow, that vector of justice for our city, our state, our country, and our world, and it is so desperately needed. From all of us at Congregation Emanu, we welcome you and are so very glad that you are with us. And now it's my pleasure to welcome Tracy Tebow to the pulpit.
Thank you, Rabbi Silk. Good evening. My name is Tracy Tebow. I won't take up much more of your time. On behalf of everyone at Brazos Bookstore, thank you so much for being here. A few housekeeping items before we begin. Tonight's program will last roughly 1 hour with 30 minutes of moderated conversation, followed by 30 minutes of audience Q&A. Please remain seated during the audience Q&A portion. If you have a question, simply raise your hand, and myself or another usher will do our best to make our way to you with the microphone. Please understand we may not get to everyone's questions in the time allotted. Tonight's ticket includes a signed copy of The Truth Will Set You Free, but first, it will piss you off. Ms. Steinem will not be personalizing any books, and there will be no meet and greet or photo line after the event. And now it is my absolute pleasure to welcome tonight's speakers. Gloria Steinem will be joined in conversation by Barbara Ann Radnofsky. Barbara Ann Radnofsky is a mother, grandmother, wife, teacher, and mediator. After practicing law at Vinson & Elkins LLP from 1979 to 2006, she became the first woman in Texas history to be nominated to the Texas Democratic Party for U.S. Senate in 2006 and for State Attorney General in 2010. Barbara was selected as the Outstanding Young Lawyer of Texas in 1988 and has been listed for more than 25 years in Best Lawyers in America in multiple areas. Barbara co-founded the Houston chapter of the National Association of Urban Debate Leagues and has served on numerous charitable boards and as a peer mediation teacher in public and private Houston schools. Her latest book is A Citizen's Guide to Impeachment from Melville House. I think Rabbi Silk did an excellent job in introducing our feature speaker for the night, so I will let that sit. Ladies, gentlemen, and those outside of the binary, please welcome me in joining Gloria Steinem.
Oh, there's so many of you. Think of the trouble we can make. Fantastic.
Well, welcome. Welcome to Houston.
Thank you.
About 42 years since 1977.
True.
When you made
that was huge. You know, that conference, the National Women's Conference held here, is the most important event nobody knows about. But I have, but I have been back quite a lot since.
Well, tell me about 1977. It was a conference that Congress actually embraced. The Carter administration embraced it, and it was revolutionary.
The Carter administration didn't exactly embrace it, but
the history books say they did.
Well, Bella Abzug and Shirley Chisholm and Patsy Mink and a lot of great women in Congress actually got Congress to pass an appropriation for this massive event, which included 2 years of meetings in every state and territory, and electing women who represented economically, racially, ethnically, Native American women, actually represented the state. And then we met here in what really was a constitutional convention for women, since we didn't go to the first one. So I have a great feeling in my heart for Houston.
Well, and the resolutions that came from that conference and the names that were applied, the issues that became front page news are in part because of a theme that you enter into the book about naming things and the philosophy that's not really taught in the schools, the science and the philosophy of giving ideas a name. And that's really in part what the book is about and what the book celebrates. Can you talk a little bit about the icons of that philosophy and how you came to thinking about Ms. Sanger?
I mean, I hardly know where to begin, because I think there are two things, history and the past, and they are not the same. Okay? So we are on land here that was, and perhaps still is, occupied by what Native nation?
Karankawa.
Right, okay. As far as I know, all the nations of the Iroquois Confederacy, for instance, the Haudenosaunee, did not have gendered pronouns, did not have he and she in their language, did not have a word for race. Now we're trying to get back to getting rid of these divisions that arrived with Columbus. But since we don't start history when people started, we don't necessarily know that. So it's not just the Houston Conference that got written out of history, but we keep getting written out of history, and by not beginning when people started, we miss a lot.
And the notions that came out really in the 70s about sexual violence, and it's not as though that's when sexual violence began, but it's the first time that women started, aggressive women, writers, gave names to the kind of causes that were discussed here in 1977. And by naming them, one thing the book teaches in very few words, it is a very sparsely, the words are sparse, but there's a lot of information in them, that scientifically you need to, and philosophically, and for people to understand and communicate, you need to name it. You need to dignify ideas with names. And it seems to me that one of the things that you've embraced here.
Yes, I think, let's see, how can I say that? I think first of all, we don't start history when people started. Then we don't move forward by naming what's really going on. So naming something is really important and magic, because something doesn't really exist until it has
You talk about
language.
sexual harassment, sex discrimination, words that are charged and therefore get attention.
But they didn't. The reason they didn't have names is because they were called life. And because as long as since the Europeans showed up, women had been possessions. I mean, patriarchy is about possessing women's bodies as the means of reproduction. We happen to have the one thing men don't have, which is wombs, right? If we didn't have wombs, we'd be fine. And in order to control reproduction, how many workers, how many soldiers, or how many workers in the family, and if there is racism or caste, as in India, then it becomes even more important to control reproduction in order to keep, otherwise you can't keep races separate and distinct in the long run. So racism and sexism have always been intertwined. It's probably impossible to, unearth one without also unearthing the other. And so naming sexual harassment, I mean, I always heard that in the old days, if a woman was found in flagrante with her lover by her husband in the state of Texas, he could kill her and get off with is that true?
As a practical matter, apparently, and
So I mean,
try to
when
apply law
if
on
that's
that.
the reality, then you're not going to, get things properly named.
And you've got quite a bit of the book devoted to quotes not just from you, but from other people. There's some introspection in there as well, particularly in the introduction. You talk about when you were a bit younger, you had a kind of what you reference as a smart-ass comment on Socrates, that Socrates had said that the unexamined life is not worth living. And you had very famously said,
The examined life is not worth living. I thought, what are those assholes sitting there doing nothing? But I've changed since then, okay?
and that's much appreciated. And on a serious note, what do you think accounts for that change? Are you examining your life nowadays and considering things in a way differently
not really.
than before? Okay.
No, but I do realize now what I did not then, which is the influence of my childhood on the rest of my life. I mean, I was just thinking, okay, that's over. I don't have to think about that again. But of course, that's not true. I mean, how we were raised has a huge, deep impact on us. So, it wasn't until I realized that I hadn't made a home for myself how much I regretted not having a home as a child. I mean, I had enough to eat and I was well cared for, it wasn't that. But my father was a kind of gypsy and we lived in house trailers most of the year. And therefore I didn't go to school until I was about 11, I think, for a full year. And I just thought, well, fine, that's it. And now I'm off on my, and then I realized how much I had missed having a home and missed having, a conventional family. So it's just common sense, but I think it took me a while anyway. I don't know about all of you.
You spoke very movingly of your dad. There's one quotation in the book where you talk about women who accept unkindness and sexual violence, and that they seem to take that as just part of life. But you talk about the kindness of your father, and that affected all of your expectations.
No, I think if you've had a difficult, mean, violent father, it's much harder to know that there are choices, that there are many other kinds of men. Because I had a kind, patient, irresponsible, yes, about money, yes, fine. But I was his buddy, and that, what more can any child want? So because of that, I always knew there were kind, good men. And I'm very grateful for that.
And you, in the dedication part of the book, you thank your mother. So it does sound like, though, it wasn't what we might consider the traditional, whatever that means, childhood that you had. You had some influences and some vagabondry that made you what you are.
No, well, and my mother was loved poetry and books and recited Dorothy Parker and Edna St. Vincent Millay to me, and so, and Omar Khayyam, and so which was, but it took me a while to understand that before I was born, she had given up the work she loved the most, which was being a journalist. I had an older sister, 9 years older. She tried to both raise my sister, have my crazy, irresponsible father running around, and still keep her job as on the Toledo Blade as a Sunday editor, which was huge for a woman then. But she just couldn't do it. And she had what was then called a nervous breakdown and was in a sanatorium for a year or two, and then just gave it all up. And by then, also, she had been given an early tranquilizer, which was called sodium pentothal, which it was also, given to other women at the time. Tranquilizers really were almost totally given to women. And she became addicted to it. Mm-hmm. So when I was growing up, I didn't realize who she could have been. And only later, did I realize in some ways I was living out the unlived life of my mother. I bet there are others of us here.
And I heard the in the audience. And that's the quote that I think it's the only quote in the book that appears twice, that we are living the unlived lives of our mothers.
Mm-hmm. And maybe our fathers too, but I think statistically maybe our fathers were better able to live out their dreams. Mm-hmm. And of course, no one can live out someone else's dream. We're each unique, we're the result of heredity and environment combined in a way that could never happen before and could never happen again. So it's not right. I mean, each person should be able to live out his or her unique individual destiny. So, what might have been are the saddest words.
Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to just ask the audience a question, because it occurs to me, I'm wondering if it resonates, and you men can answer. Mm-hmm. I want to ask if you'd hold up your hand if it resonates with you. You don't have to say personally, but does it resonate with you, the expression, we are living the unlived lives of our mother? And the reason I ask it was when I read it in your book the first time, I thought, we are achieving what our mothers didn't achieve, but for some, they didn't realize it until very late in life. And so it was natural, perhaps, because we have the qualities of our mothers. But the way you explain it just now, I had not understood it that way. And so it resonates both ways.
No, they couldn't. It wasn't as if they had a choice. For the most part, right?
Yeah. You cover so many different topics. This isn't like the normal book where its focus is on one or two things, although there's the general concept. There's pieces of advice, there are experiences, there's introspection, but there's also a great deal of respect for certain marginalized groups. And you talk about some of the people who have figured it out in terms of movement and in terms of making a difference, and you emphasize Black women. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to say that you're here in Houston today, but you'll be at Prairie View tomorrow talking in what's called a Scholar's Voice series at Prairie View A&M. And it's November 8th at 10 a.m. in Prairie View. And the series is When and Where I Enter at 35, a symposium in honor of Paula Giddings.
Yeah, because Paula Giddings' When and Where I Enter is a book I hope you know. It saved the sanity of millions of women. And it's the 35th anniversary of that book, right? So we're celebrating that anniversary. And if you want to come, I think you can go online and see if there's,
Well, for folks who can't come, do you want to give it our, like our 30-second or our 20,000-foot view of what?
Well, let's see. Our 20,000. I mean, you can read Paula Gidding's great book. Okay, so, but what she and Beverly Guy Sheftel, another great Black feminist scholar, and I are working on, is a book which identifies a lot of the pioneer, important Black feminists who established, beginning in the 1960s, this wave. But the media and the general concept of the women's movement has been mostly white, and the general concept of the civil rights movement hasn't properly included Black women either. So we are trying to rectify that a bit. But just rather than go one by one, I will just say that when Ms. Magazine started in 1972, we published the first big Lewis Harris poll of women's opinions on women's issues and on the movement. And it turned out that I think more than 67% of Black women supported the feminist movement and all of the issues, and only 30-some% of white women. Now, look at the vote for Trump. All right, 96% of 96% of Black women voted for Hillary Clinton, and 51 to 53, there's a debate, of white women voted for Trump. So Black women have always been disproportionate. What? She said smarter. I mean, it's just so obvious it's driving us crazy. So this is why we're writing the book, because it's clear. I mean, if this country is going to be saved, it's by Black women as a voting bloc, right?
Well, and it allows me the opportunity to say thank you for coming to Houston right now, because you're here at a time where there are many people energized. There are many people who are looking for hope. They're looking to fight voter suppression. They're looking to fight discrimination, and they are looking to, I think you said I could ask and say anything I want. They're looking to defeat Donald Trump. And so...
Listen, I personally, coming from New York, I personally apologize for this guy. I just want to say we who know him voted 96% against him. And when people were asked nationally why they voted for him, they said because he was a good businessman. He is so not a good businessman. If somebody figured out that if he had just invested, he inherited from his father, he would be richer. Yeah. Right. So I can't begin to tell you what a disaster this guy is. And my only hope is that he has made us woke, because now we see everything that's wrong with the country at a high level. And look at the election. I mean, more people are voting. As I travel, I see more activism than I've ever been before. It's a very expensive way of waking up, okay? But I do definitely have hope.
Well, and you talk about hope, and at the same time, your book makes clear, and your discussions make clear, that it's not just a matter of hope. The converse is true. It seems like your point is, we are the ones to change history, every one of us, and that we can't depend on just hope. We need it. Thank you for being here.
Well, no, but
we need...
But hope is a form of planning. I think that's in there. I'm not sure.
Hope is a form of planning.
Yeah, right. So we can't let anybody suppress our hopes, because if our hopes weren't already real within us, we couldn't even hope them. So, we have to use them. And I do think we have a case of the shoulds, what should I do, instead of doing everything we can. And and we tend to look up and think, I think after Obama was elected, for instance, we thought, oh, good, what a good idea, and rested too much, and failed to recognize the fact that, after 2 terms, few parties have stayed in office, and also the degree of racist resentment there was of seeing him in the White House. So I'm just advocating that instead of looking up, we look at each other and say, okay, it's 9 a.m., what are we going to do today?
And in the presidential race, what are your feelings? And I just kind of say that generically, but what are your plans and what are your feelings and what do you think should be done?
I would work my heart out for any one of those candidates. They all have good hearts and good minds, and I'll be there. I'll be there, campaigning, right?
So you're touring, you're working, you're writing a new book, you are touring on another book. You're into some filmmaking projects, if I understand. Can you kind of give an idea of what your plans and hopes are?
Well, the filmmaking project is not mine, actually. Okay. But Julie Taymor, do you know the wonderful Julie Taymor? The most magical who did Frida, who did Across the Universe. So she asked me if she could make a movie out of my road book. I said, are you kidding me? I think you're a genius. You can do anything you want. Okay. So she is busily doing that. And also it will be out before the elections, and we hope that it will be also something that will allow us to go from state to state and register and vote and make trouble and right.
Nothing would make us happier. Is it possible that road trip will take you back to Houston or Texas?
Well, it depends on your telling us, and you're telling us exactly in what districts were needed.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go. And the notion of movement, creating a movement, being part of action and not just waiting for orders from above is something that really emanates from the book. There's a lot of different themes in it, but that if there's one central theme, I don't know if I'm hitting on it or not, but if there is one central theme that the book has, what would it be?
Well, I guess if I had to say what I think we hope for in the shortest possible way, and that's the fun of quotes, if you poured water on a quote, it would become a book, is that we as human beings are linked, we are not ranked. That's the shortest way I've come up with saying that the paradigm of human organization for most of human history was the circle, not the pyramid. And I think we can keep that in our heads as a possibility, even though, of course, we have been profoundly influenced by the hierarchies, including religious ones, that we have grown up in. But nonetheless, I think our hopes and our imagination can carry us.
You are quite diverse in your book. You use quotes from other people. They're obviously ones that you also love. You have a whole section, really, that involves mothering, the difference between being a mother and mothering.
Mm-hmm. Mother is a verb, that's my theory. Yeah. So everybody can mother, right?
And you talk about childbirth. You use a quote on childbirth that says, childbirth is more admirable than conquest, more amazing than self-defense, and as courageous as either one.
Isn't that true? I mean, I have not experienced childbirth, but I remember for the first time in my life going to steam rooms, and it's not something we did in Toledo. We didn't go to steam rooms. And looking at nude women and seeing the scars from cesareans and seeing the courage, the incredible courage of giving birth. Nothing is more courageous than that.
And especially coming from you and from from this very diverse set of loves in your book, it's just encouraging to women across the entire spectrum. Because what also emanates from the book is respect. And not leaving out anyone and trying to motivate people. Was that an intent, or is that just a byproduct of the book?
I mean, it's just, being isolated with other white people only, or any other, is boring. Hello? I mean, if you know those exercises where if there are only 100 people in the world, who would be who? I think there are only about 10 white people.
Yeah.
And we learn from difference. We don't learn from sameness.
And you say that growth comes from saying yes to the unknown. And it also seems to be a message of hope and diversity and embracing things that are different. And although you sometimes think of older people, and now that I'm in my 60s, that seems extremely young.
Oh, it seems to me extremely young.
Yes, there you go. All right. It's your willingness to grow and change and to be as energetic as any 20-year-old in these new areas you're proceeding as to where you perceive, it seems, that the greatest need is. And if that's not the case, what's
it's
motivating?
not up to me to say whether. I just think we need to organize together, and dividing us up by age is as bad as the other divisions.
Yes.
Because I remember when it was worse, have hope. Young people who see how bad it is are mad as hell. We need to organize together because we have something unique to bring to each other. And I'm so grateful to see all the great young activists who are younger than my blue jeans. I mean, I feel like I just had to wait for some of my friends to be born. I'm so glad to see.
You also talk about work and what work has meant for you. You give a lot of yourself in terms of just how much both writing, editing, and your work at Ms. Magazine. And you have some great quotes about loving work. Is it still the same for you? Is what you're doing now, is this, for example, the book tour, the book writing, the activism against Trump? Is all of that still
Yeah, I mean, I
something you
just
love?
think work is not a four-letter word. Work is what, hopefully, our work is what, when we're doing it, we love it so much we forget what time it is. I mean, that's kind of how you know that you're in the right place, doing the right thing. And I realize that that's not possible for lots of folks who have to do what they don't like in order to do after work what they like. But nonetheless, I think that we're expressing that unique person inside of us one way or another, whether at conventional work or what we do on our own.
Is it impertinent, or you said I could ask anything I want, so it can't be impertinent, but what do you want to be your legacy? Is there a plan? Is there a desire? Is there a hope?
No, I think that's up to the people who come after me. I mean,
You're not one that would say, here's what I want on my gravestone, here's my epitaph.
No, the only one that's been
games.
suggested is "At last she sleeps alone." No, I'm going to be cremated and sprinkled around the universe. Right. No, it's up to the people in the present to figure out what I hope that something that I have done or said or I don't know, is useful. But it's not up to me. It's up to the people.
And the next book is the one that you're working on. Does it have a central theme as well? So we can be kind of watching out for that too? The fact that you've got one just out and that you're already
that
in the
one
work.
is that I'm doing with Beverly Guy Sheftel and Paula Giddings is kind of the hidden figures, you might say, of the women's women. I mean, the women who really were and are central. I mean, I learned feminism way more proportionately from black women than from white women, just luckily, because I was writing feminist articles. I couldn't get them published anyplace. People, well, some in New York Magazine. I was getting invitations to speak. I was terrified of speaking. I lost all my saliva. Each tooth acquired a little Angora sweater. There was no, it is still happening a little bit. So I asked Dorothy Pittman Hughes, a dear friend, who was fearless. Thank you. A fearless speaker, if we could do it together. And it was an accident, really, but then we discovered how important it was that a white woman and a black woman speak together, especially in the South, but not only in the South, because we got audiences neither one of us would have attracted on our own. Then she had a baby and wanted to stay home with the baby. So Florence Kennedy, how many people here? The great, outrageous Florence Kennedy, a brilliant civil rights lawyer, an activist. There's going to be a play about her, I hope that, anyway. So she became my speaking partner. And, you know, those are the women I learned from.
So will it be profiles of great women?
You mean the book I'm doing, the three of us are doing? Yeah, no, we're trying to fill in the history, yes, right, a bit, right.
And, Barbara? Yes. One more question. Ready? Yeah. Oh. Mm-hmm. Well, the question I have, the last question while you're looking for audience questions, would be with regard, again, to return to politics, if you have any, and maybe there'll be questions as well, if you have any predictions.
Well, I feel good about the recent election, right?
Yeah.
But I also think that we should not predict, we should live in the present. And we should make sure that everything we do day by day by day is directed at getting out the vote. You know, we don't have to convince, I mean, you know, only a third of the country voted for him anyway, you know. But we need to get it. Our turnout rate is still, I believe, less than India with all the problems of illiteracy and poverty and so on. So we just have to devote ourselves wherever we are, you know, to make sure our neighbors, our people in our offices, in our factories, whatever it is. And I have to do that in New York where I live too.
We appreciate it, and we expect you to do it outside of New York because we may hold you to your word to help fight for voter suppression and help get out the vote here in Texas.
All righty. I'm going to take a question at the front, and then we'll have someone in the back that's going to be fielding questions as well.
But you know, you can also give us answers. You don't...
Somehow, I don't see you at the Smith of your day wearing white gloves, silver tea service. It's not the Smith my daughter went to. How did you fit in at Smith?
Not very well, actually. Not because, I mean, you know, I was at Smith in the 50s, okay, need I say more, but also I had gone to a high school in Toledo where we wore blue jeans and loafers with pennies in them and so on, and I went to Smith and suddenly they were wearing Bermuda shorts and cashmere sweaters. I mean, it was a whole, and I thought Bermuda shorts were ugly. The whole dormitory took a collection to buy me a pair of Bermuda shorts. But I'm grateful to Smith. I mean, they gave me all the books I wanted to read and 3 meals a day. I mean, what else could you want?
There you go.
Looking back, the 50 years from the 1960s, and if forward from then, would you say you were more gratified or disappointed in the progress women have made?
Well, in the 60s, I mean, I wouldn't have, I mean, it wasn't really until the end of the 60s, the beginning of the 70s, that finally, it dawned on me that we need a feminist movement. So I think in the time you cite, I was probably pretending to conform, not conforming, and hoping no one would notice, okay? So, because I had graduated from Smith, I was engaged, I didn't want to get married, I realized I had to go very far away, so I went to India and lived in India for 2 years. And there I saw Gandhian organizing and walking through villages, but it took me a while to realize that that was relevant here too. So I don't think that I would have had the vision. I was still engaged in private rebellion rather than public movements.
Barbara, thank you so much for being here and interviewing Gloria. I'm Rosalie Weisfeld from McAllen, Texas, from the border. And the last time I saw you, Ms. Steinem, was in 1983 when you were in San Antonio for the Women's Political Caucus. So thank you for coming back to Texas again. At that time, I was pregnant. Now I'm a grandma from that baby.
We're just going to keep meeting like this.
So my question for you is, why are we here again? I mean, why did I have to go to Washington to march again? Why are our reproductive rights that we worked so hard for, immigrants' rights, our borders are being shut down? What's happening in the country? And what can we do to ensure that this time we keep our rights?
Well, that's a big question. I think
Tis.
I think it's important to acknowledge that we have won the majority opinion in this country. All the great social justice movements, the civil rights movement, the gay and lesbian and transgender, the women's movement, the environmental movement. I mean, now, if you look at the public opinion polls, people agree with those movements. All right. What that means is that the 30 or 40% of the country that still feels dependent on or entitled to the old hierarchies, I mean, they got born into them. They didn't make it up. It's not totally their fault. But they feel wrongly, they feel displaced. And so they are in backlash against our success. I think what we sometimes fail to recognize is that right after a success is the most dangerous time. I mean, you know, and we need to think about that. But we need to remember that those issues that used to be 30% or whatever are now our majority issues. And we just have to get off our asses and behave like the majority. But
Is that a new statement?
Yes.
That sounds new. I like that. We need to get off our asses and stop and start behaving like the majority.
Okay. But I want to say one more thing, because this also should be part of our schooling and isn't, okay? The first step in every authoritarian or hierarchical regime is controlling reproduction, where I start, right, okay? Because otherwise, as I was saying, you can't control the number of workers, so you can't, right. So it's always going to be the case that controlling women's bodies is so crucial that it will continually be contentious. And we see that with the closing of abortion clinics, with the change in abortion laws, state by state. Actually, since I knew I was coming here, I wore this bracelet, which is like the old POW bracelets, remember that? Mm-hmm. This is to Rosie Jimenez, who was the first person to die from the Hyde Amendment, which denied her because she was on public assistance, denied her an abortion. She went across the border into Mexico and died, leaving her daughter and so on. So this is her birth and death date. And, we continuously work. I mean, 1 in 3 women has always needed an abortion from the time I remember, from the 70s. Now it's 1 in 4, because at least there's more knowledge of contraception. But it is, if democracy doesn't begin with men and women, men too, controlling our own bodies and our own voices, there is no democracy. This is where democracy begins. But to all of, I say that because people are saying, I can't believe we're fighting this shit over good. But we're fighting it because it's basic.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Beckman, and I get up and work every day to fight gun violence in this country with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. My question relates to the 52 women every month that are killed by guns in this country. We are fighting against gun violence. Should we be fighting for fewer guns or less assholes?
I think it's faster to fight for fewer guns, but we should also know that we are the only developed country in the world that allows. People here have more guns than, I don't have to tell you this. And I think we should make fun of these guys who are so insecure in their masculinity that they need. And I also think a very well-funded buyback program would work well, and we can say to women, because actually if you have a gun in the household, it's more likely to be used against somebody in the household than a stranger. So I think if we said to women, you can get $1,000 if you steal his gun and take it to the cops, I would be in favor of that. And make fun of them. What do you need a gun for? Are you so insecure? You're what? It's insane. All right.
Hi, my name is Phoenix Blanton, and I'm 14 years old. And I was wondering, do you have any tips on how I can help my generation? Because there's still people that think that women belong in the kitchen and that abortion is wrong. And there's also a lot of gun violence going on. And
oh, wait a minute, where are you? Do you see?
We're both having trouble seeing.
Yeah, right.
Hello.
hi.
You are the future, and we are here to listen to you. You know what you need. You don't need us to tell you that. And your body belongs to you and nobody else. And my role, as I was saying, I feel like I just had to wait for some of my friends to be born. I feel like you were my friend, and I am here to help you. It's not for me to tell you what you need. You know inside what you need.
Hi, my name's Elisa Cardinal. I am actually running for U.S. Congress here in Houston against Dan Crenshaw.
Obviously, this is a good thing. This is always a smart audience, right?
Thank you. I want to ask for myself and for all of my friends, the women here in the room. I know there are several of us that are getting involved in politics. What advice do you have for us?
No, it belongs to you, this system. You're running for office. That's great. You stood up in a big meeting and said you're running for office. Does everybody know this race,
Yeah.
right?
This is the 38th, right? Second, sorry, second. Important race. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Very.
No, I mean, I think you're doing fine, and it's up to us to elect you.
Well, first of all, I would really like to thank you so much for being here tonight. For many years, I have read your writing, and I was there when the first Ms. magazine came out, and that Bunny article, and I was right with you, trying to get through college and getting a college degree and asking, can you make coffee, and can you type, that kind of thing. So thank you so much
The
for
one
everything.
good thing about the current system of computers is that men, did you notice that suddenly they could magically type overnight?
Isn't that amazing? That just is so amazing that they can
it's
actually
amazing.
do that.
They've maintained for years they couldn't type.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah, they're even learning how to use the washing machine now. That's just amazing, too. Anyway, my question is, and it seems kind of like a downer, but it isn't, but I like to study things when it comes to women, and I've watched the early morning Saturday cartoons. I'm not a crazy person, I just watch them. But I look at the way women are depicted in the cartoons, in our magazines, still in the movies, and I keep thinking everything we went through, and either many of us are about the same age, to fight against the kind of sexist depiction of women, and the younger women don't seem to be getting this. They seem to think, oh, it's fine. And the only thing they worry about is their hair and their makeup and what designer handbag they're carrying. And they don't know what we went through to get to where we are now. So how do you suggest, and maybe you'll write a book about this, to wake them up and say, look at this. You've got to, our rights are slipping away because you're slipping away.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there are different ways of expressing oneself, and some girls and women do it by body decoration, and some, an orange hair, and, I mean, I think we need, it's a human instinct to decorate our bodies. If you don't think so, go online and look at the OMO people, O-M-O people, in Africa who paint themselves every day, men and women, beautifully, So I'm not sure that we should dictate to each other what it is we do with our bodies. But I do think that that women may be the one group in a kind of big general way that becomes more radical with age. Because we kind of have to experience, because we're told a lot of lies, so we have to experience how it really is before we get truly radicalized, if that makes sense. And Carolyn Heilbrunn wrote wonderfully about this, about how the radical older woman, and also we have lived beyond the role then, because that is only about having children, raising children, and so on. And that once we're too old for that, they don't really have a role for us anymore, and we can be as rebellious as we want. So I've always looked forward to an army of gray-haired women, or women concealing their gray hair, I don't care, taking over the earth.
Hi, Gloria. I'm 22 years old, and I'm awake. You mentioned the influence of your childhood on the rest of your upbringing, especially as a woman and especially as a feminist. How do we talk to younger generations, especially young girls? There are plenty of young girls in this audience. How do we speak to them about their responsibility, not only as feminists, but as women, as young women, and what it means to be a person growing up who they are? Does that make sense? No, I know it makes sense because I wrote it. But how do we speak to them in a way that doesn't scare them to be themselves?
Well, I think it's pretty true that people do what they see more than what they're told. So I think the answer is for us to be the women we want them to have as examples. Not that we're each the same, we're not, but I mean, and I think of that, say every time a woman passes a mirror and criticizes her body, a girl is watching.
Yeah.
Don't do that, Be the person you want to be, and you will be an example to those girls.
Hello, Gloria. I'm right in the center here. About the time that Bobby Riggs and Billie Jean King played tennis here, you came to town and we had a good meeting. And at that meeting, we proclaimed that Houston was the feminist capital of the world.
Yes,
so what's your take?
Because of the Houston conference that we were talking about.
Well, it was the Houston conference. There was the National Women's Political Caucus convention here first at the Rice Hotel.
Mm-hmm, right.
And then there was the NOW convention here, and the Billie Jean King and Bobby Riggs, and Poppy Northcutt at NASA. So I want to know what you think about Houston today.
You in this room make me feel very good about Houston.
Hi, Gloria. Over here. To your right.
To your right.
Not that far.
Okay. What?
She said not that far right.
Not that far.
Try it. Okay. Hi, thank you so much for being here.
We saw the hand wave.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. And I'm 42. I think I'm almost the same age you were in 1977. If you could go back and speak to 1976 Gloria, what would you tell her to do faster, stronger, and more of so we can move the needle in 2019 and 2020?
That's really interesting. I mean, because I'm trying desperately to think what I was doing in 1970. I mean, the Ms. Magazine had already started. We were killing ourselves trying to keep it going, all the political activities and so on. I guess I just would have told me to trust me more. Because I think we have ideas, we have instincts, we think something should be done, but we're not sure. I think women have a disease called "it's probably only me, but." and I think I still had too much of that disease. I wasn't trusting my instinct enough. Right?
What a great question. What a great answer. Yeah, trust yourself more. What a great question.
Hi, I'm Joy. I'm 14 in high school. I'm a freshman.
Can you speak a little louder?
Oh, okay. So I was talking with my teachers a few days ago, and we were talking about how my female teachers still don't get paid as much as the male teachers. And yeah.
It's okay, say the school you go to.
Lamar High School.
Okay. All right. Are we all going to write to the principal of...
Well, I need to I need your input on teachers that it's going to be okay and one day they're going to finally get paid as much as males do.
But
it's not okay.
I mean, I'm sorry, but this is illegal. There are lawyers in the house.
Well, it was because we were talking about it, and my female teacher was saying that she does so much work but never gets paid enough. And so I was just wondering how to tell her that one day we're going to get there.
Okay, well, first you've done the first and most important and great thing, which is to stand up and say that. And I thank you. And any lawyers in the surrounding, or people who know the school board, or in the surrounding area, just look at this, wonderful young woman, and see if you can't fix this. Thank you.
Hi, I'm back here in the middle, in the back. Hello.
See, it's the waving hands we can see.
The waving hands.
Can't
Okay,
always
yeah,
hear,
okay,
but we
okay.
can just see the waving.
It's
We
a
can hear
pleasure
you, even
to
if
have
we can't
here.
see you, we can hear you. It's okay.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I know my mom is watching live stream. Hi, Mom. I'm glad to hear you speak so much about your relationships with Black feminists. And yeah, I think that's really important. I was a clerk yesterday at the polling location, and let me tell you what, 3/4 of the people that showed up to vote were Black women, which is awesome. But I'm looking around this room, and I'm not seeing a representative percentage of Black women from Houston in this room. And it concerns me that you have to go all the way to Prairie View in order to find a group of Black women to speak with. And I think it's our responsibility as white women to make friends and become friends with people that don't look like us, so that we can have shared experiences, and we're not speaking over and for each other. Instead, we're speaking together as a unified voice. So one of the questions I have for you is, with my Black friends and in my Black community that I do work in, they prefer the word womanist over feminist. And I wanted to get your opinion about that. And I also wanted to have you address what I call mythery. It's mythology and history, where we're getting ready to celebrate 100 years of voting, but not for Black women. And so a lot of our history leaves out a proportionate number of women that makes them feel excluded. So it seems to me that we're in a position right now where we need to re-identify how, as women, we're serving each other.
Yeah, I think that, Alice Walker prefers the word womanist too, and that's a great word. I kind of liked women's liberation as a term. I think feminist came into being more because it was easier for everybody to say that we're a feminist than a women's liberationist. But it doesn't matter. It's the meaning that matters. It's the content that matters, not the word exactly. So it's all fine. And I think about the segregated ways in which we live and the segregated ways we learn about history, we just really have to make an effort to get out of our box and to understand that we only, this is where we started. It's crazy that we are divided by the amount of melanin in our skin, which we all came from the same origin in Southern Africa, all human beings. We just traveled to different places, some to places where there was less sun, so we lost melanin to get more vitamin D, some where there was more. It's so, and we need to think about that just ourselves. Who do we work with? Who do we go to the movies, if we're still going to the movies? Who do we have lunch with? Who do we, to just, diversify. It's not us it's not up to white women to be inclusive. That's giving white women the power to be inclusive. We are the ones who are deprived, in fact, percentage-wise. Okay. So, but we just need to look at our own situation and see what the opportunities are.
We have 3 words in the English language: Mr., Miss, and Mrs. Where did the word Ms. come from? Who thought of it? And how was it propagated through the culture?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, it turned out to be a very old word that from, I don't know, the 1700s, that was a contraction of mistress, and it didn't connote marital status because even children were referred to as master and mistress, right? Right. So it was in the English dictionary, and we just picked it up as a title for the magazine so that women didn't have to disclose their marital status. It's not so necessary anymore, but then it was quite revolutionary. I mean, I remember somebody refusing to give me, let me make an application for an airline ticket at the airport because I wouldn't put Miss or Mrs. I mean, and at banks, it probably happened to some people, right. So it was very useful in its day. I don't think we need it so much anymore.
Hi, Gloria. She probably can't see me. Okay. Hi, Gloria.
She's saying there's a great movie called Harriet about Harriet Tubman.
Way back here. Hi. My name is Candace, and I'm 47 years old, and I've been your fan since I was 16 when I read Revolution from Within. And it had a very profound effect on me, not just because of the beautiful words you wrote, but because of how it came to me. I had asked my mother to buy me the book for Christmas, and I remember Christmas morning sitting around the Christmas tree with my dad and my mom and my sister and unwrapping the book and being so very excited because I had read about it and I had a sense of its message. But the thing that sticks out for me was my father's reaction. He looked very angry and put his head down and just kind of grimaced, as if it was physically painful for him that his teenage daughter was kind of going down this path. And I love him, but he's a woefully ignorant man who voted for Trump. Be that as it may, I think that that's a very common knee-jerk experience to the word feminism, to Gloria Steinem, to everything that's related to the women's movement. What have you found to be, if it's possible, the most effective way to deal with that level of ignorance in a very kind of brief encounter, which is how most of us come in contact with this kind of ignorance, right? It's almost in passing, and we later think, I should have said this, I should have said that. What have you found to be most satisfying in those situations?
Well, I would say you're in the situation, trust your instinct, but be sure and say something, because otherwise you'll walk around for hours saying, what if I had said, which is the worst punishment. But I would try for empathy and say, look, suppose you were exactly the same person with the same smarts and the same humor and the same talents, and you were born in a female body. Would you not want to be equal? Just any way that you can strive for empathy. If it doesn't work, then it's his fault. I mean, it's sort of
All right, that's all the time that we have for audience questions. Gloria, Barbara, do y'all have any closing remarks?
All right, well, yes.
Please.
No, why don't you go? I don't know.
After you, Alphonse.
Okay.
No.
All right.
We'd love to hear maybe some last pieces of advice.
No. Well, here, I mean, you have all given us this gift of coming here on a rainy day, and I'm so grateful to you. And I just wonder if you know each other, okay? So do me a favor and look around on your way out and see 1 or 2 or 3 people you don't know. Say your name, what you care about, what you're doing. You may leave here with a new friend, a new revolutionary colleague, a new job, who knows what. Because, we should be sitting in a circle. We should all be able to talk to each other like this. I'm so grateful that you came. And I so hope that because we were together tonight like this, in this one space, that maybe tomorrow will be a little bit better than it would have been. I know it will be better for me.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Really appreciate it. That one's yours.
Okay. Yep. Okay.